Everybody, another video here for you today. We're going to go back to ancient America, and this just proves you never know what you're going to find. This series never gets old for me because I find mysteries like this just sitting there waiting to be told. We are going down to a mound site here in Georgia. This is called the Nacoochee Mound, and it's sitting just right out here in a field today, just sitting out there all by itself. There is a history to this place and this area. This is actually a reconstruction of what was excavated here quite a while ago. Let's just do a little reading, show some pics, and I will expose a pretty good mystery here. Here is a look at the site today. Obviously, farming is going on here now, and it really has gone on here many, many years. It says, in the late 1880s, Captain James H. Nichols bought the property and built the surrounding pastures and farm that sat on it. He shaved 2 feet off the top of the mound and planted the now infamous gazebo on top of it. Now, there is kind of a fanciful story behind this place, kind of a myth of how or who is buried beneath here. Supposedly, a daughter and a son of opposing tribes were out exploring, and they met each other in the woods, and they fell in love. And since they were from opposing tribes, father was not too happy, and somebody got thrown off a mountain here, and then these 2 lovers were buried in this mound. But I think that is just a story, maybe to kind of direct you to a history that's incorrect here, maybe. But it's kind of confusing, but that is the story behind this place, at least the myth that surrounds the place. Kind of an early American Romeo and Juliet story. Here is a sign at the site. It says, the Nacoochee Indian Mound was the center of an ancient Cherokee town of Guaxul, visited by De Soto in 1540 in a search for gold, according to legend. But I actually am more concerned about what actually happened. And the Smithsonian was here, and the story that they promoted is not what happened here. There is 2 distinct layers of history here. Here is a blurry pic of the excavation work going on here in the early 1900s. Gazebo right there. Here is a book I found. Here is where they sliced the mound down here, and they found a few stone box graves in here. Here is some pottery found at the site, and this is pretty important here. But you see like a feline head protruding off of it there. But the people who were here from the Smithsonian kind of say, well, this is a Cherokee culture that built a city here. But the people who really did good investigative work here notes that there are 2 clear periods of history here. There's an early, very early mound builder group, and then there's a later culture that comes along here, maybe 400-500 years ago, and then they kind of stay around the area, and their cultural influences are seen on the pottery. But clearly the earlier woodland period, much earlier in history, is shown at the site, and the artifacts show that. Yet the history we are told here is this really doesn't go back very far. It says here 4 distinct Indian mounds exist in the Nacoochee Valley. The mounds are generally ascribed to the mound builders. However, the current belief is that the mound is transitional in nature. And I think clearly there are 2 different periods of history here. It says excavations of the Nacoochee Mound were overseen by the Smithsonian Institute. The excavators found that the top of the mound had been removed, and the mound itself was smaller in circumference than the original mound. Starting on June 19, 1915, and continuing until July 2, the excavation produced 75 burials. Here's a pic of excavation of the mound. Here's the guy right down here. That'll give you some idea of how big this place was. But right down here, you notice the stones. In the close-up pic here, what is described as a stone grave burial. Here's a pic of some more stones they found during the excavation work here. Here's a look at a clay effigy that was found in the mound here. I'm not sure if that's a pipe or not. One of the more stunning finds at the site was this effigy pipe. You can give your ideas on the symbolism there. I have a few different thoughts, but this isn't a very big item, and it's intricately carved here by a master craftsman, that is for sure. Here's what they call toy vessels and knob handles found at the site here. Look at a few of them there. Here is a map from 1591, and this is the Chattahoochee River area here, and he says this guy here, Theodore de Bry, says that there's gold and silver to be found in the area, but certain things seem to be depicted on here. Here's a book that was written on this place by Richard Thornton, The Nacoochee Valley Ancient Crossroads of the Americas, and he has some really excellent research on this whole area in Georgia. And Scott Walter, after I was done interviewing him late last year, me and him talked about Richard Thornton, and he just seems to produce solid work. So I will leave a link for this book below. And he also has a 1-hour video that really is fascinating on this site. And I will leave the link for that below too. Richard Thornton's book did an excellent job of going over the history of the mounds here. It says archaeologists have found that humans have lived here for at least 12,000 years. The earliest village date from around 1000 BC, and then starting 800 AD to 1500 AD, it was lived at continuously. So there was 2 different periods of history here. One thing I found very fascinating, I always take what I read with a grain of salt, but it was a very interesting thing he brought up. It says this is also the probable location where the survivors of the lost Roanoke colony spent their last days. The 8 Eleanor Dare stone tablets found here in the valley have recently been proven authentic. There is so much more that happened here, and you will find Nacoochee's story fascinating. And as I said, I always take what I read with a grain of salt, but very interesting history here written, tablets found here, and artifacts here that go back maybe 3,000 years, and a history of humans here going back maybe 12,000 years. Now, since you know I like to snoop around on Google Earth, let's just look around here. Let's look up the valley here a little ways at a site that I found extremely interesting and mysterious. It's right up here. This caught my eye right away. This is called Williams Hill right here. This is what it looks like from down here. Here's the site from overhead. This just looked weird to me, and Richard actually writes about this. This is called Williams Hill. You notice the house right on top here, and Richard writes about who may have lived there in the past. Pretty interesting stuff, but that just looked odd to me. I was obviously wondering if this could possibly be a huge ancient mound, and Richard actually writes about this, so let's just read. He writes, for almost 2 centuries, residents of the Nacoochee Valley and many tourists who have visited there have pondered a cone-shaped hill, which is 3,500 feet southwest of the famous Nacoochee Mound. It is shaped like an Indian mound and had stone ruins and many Native American artifacts on it. However, it also seemed to have a natural stone boulders in it in some places. Some thought it to be a massive mound built by giants who were able to lift large boulders. The real history of this ancient mini-volcano is extraordinary, but has completely been left out of the history books. It should be a national historic site, but is completely ignored by federal, state, and local governments. Here's a look at the mound without any trees on it, the house up here. But this just looks like a symmetrical mound builder mound, though it's very large. It's about 500 feet long and about 320 feet across. So it's very, very big. It's not crazy big, though. So it's an interesting mystery. And you notice the driveway going up here. Richard writes that this is the remains of an ancient ramp that went up this mound. Is this natural? Is this a man-made mound? Well, they have found stone ruins. They have also found natural boulders. They have found artifacts, things left here, stone ruins up on top. I think this is a big mystery. Now, flooding has cleared away some of the base of this mound that the house is on top of, Williams Hill, and it is shown stonework down below here, and even writes there is mortar in between some of this stuff here. Here we are lined up perfectly north, if you're wondering the orientation of this mound, but just to make this mystery a little greater, just right over here, there is stonework or mounds or both right on top of this hill here. You can't see anything on Google Earth, but here is LiDAR of that hilltop. It appears there might be some stonework up here, but one mound right here, square one, and stonework was reported up here. I find that very interesting. Back a few centuries ago, when people were writing about this part of the world, they reported a great sun temple, and it says the most likely candidate for the great sun temple is the massive high-sided Kennemer Mound. It is slightly more than a mile east of Williams Hill. I had discounted this site initially because there is no evidence of a stone structure. It has never been thoroughly examined by archaeologists. However, several years ago, a team of professors and students from the University of Georgia dug test pits, and they found potsherds and other things dating from around 1,400 years ago. But it seems the Kennemer Mound here, shown on the LiDAR, was cut into the natural terrace of the hill. It says the last part of the riddle was solved by Sylvia W., who grew up in the Nacoochee Valley. She said as a teen she remembered seeing the ruins of a large stone building on top of the Kennemer Mound. Some of the walls were partially standing. In the late 20th century, a family moved up the valley from Florida. They purchased the stone ruins for pocket change and paid a contractor to haul them to their land, where they were utilized in their dream house foundation and chimney. The National Historic Landmark is gone forever. So that was quite a story after I was just searching into one lone mound here. You never know what you're going to find, but that's my video coming from Georgia. The Nacoochee Mound down here led to the Kennemer Mound and that Williams Hill mystery. Was there a big artificial mound right there? That's a big mystery. I'm not sure what to think. Let me know in the comments section. Hope you thought that was cool. I think you did. You all have a very safe day.